Welcome back to another episode of Questions and Answers with Engaging Disability with the Gospel. We're so glad you're here. Just as a reminder, if you're new to our series, these questions and answers really are designed to answer the questions that you are asking, both at home and in church. We especially love to answer the questions that we get asked frequently because we figure those are ones that will be broadly helpful to our audience and possibly even so that you can pass those questions and answers along to family and friends who are asking the same things. So if you are out there and you have a question, we would love to hear from you. We keep all names anonymous and we ask our questions in a way that does not reveal any identifying information, but we would love to hear from you. So please send us a question to connect@engagingdisability.org and we will get your question in our lineup for the future. Today's question is one that we get asked a lot, and it has to do with supporting students who talk out of turn, or maybe to rephrase that a little bit, students who are constantly interrupting in the classroom setting, or even in the home setting. It will apply both ways today. So here's the question. We have a student who recently transitioned into youth ministry this year. He's very excited to be in student ministry, and we are very eager for him to be enfolded into the youth setting. But he has been having a hard time raising his hand and not blurting out everything that pops into his mind. I will add that most of his comments, thoughts, and questions are on topic. What can we do to make the learning environment easier for him, the other students, and for the teachers? And I thought this was such a well-worded question. Very realistic, very honest, and very much one that many of our parents and teachers will resonate with as either having dealt with or maybe currently are. So let me give a couple of big picture thoughts first, and then we're going to get into some specific supports. Number one, I want to say I want to applaud this youth ministry for enfolding this student. That is huge. I happen to know a little bit about the background of this particular student and in this particular church, and they have tried so hard to really transition well from children's ministry into youth ministry. One of the things that I like highlighting through a question like this is even through lots of good preparation and willing parents and willing staff and eager students, there are still hurdles and maybe obstacles that we have to navigate. And that is just a normal part of the process. So don't be discouraged by that. Instead, look at it as opportunity for everyone to grow. I'll also say that the transition from children's ministry into youth ministry is often one of our harder transitions, probably second hardest. The first hardest being the transition from youth ministry into the larger ministries of the church, women's, men's, adult ministries. But that transition from children's ministry into youth is very challenging, and it can often leave our students with unique needs in children's ministry for a lot longer than maybe they should be there, simply because it's easier, there's more supports, more volunteers, more accessible curriculum. So I just want to encourage any of our listeners who have a student in this same age group, please reach out, let us help. We want to help you make that transition into youth group a positive one. We want our kids to have peers, and we want them to be broadly known, and we want them to be able to learn age-appropriate content when possible. So the second thing that I want to say about this question is it applies to students of all ages, not just our youth ministry kids. There are preschoolers, elementary, youth, young adults who all struggle with this same issue. And so I'm going to try to give a couple of different supports and ideas and show you how those work for different ages and let you choose the one that works best for your particular stage of development in your student. And number three, I want to say, I want you to always be thinking about positive supports. Most teachers naturally respond to students who are talking out of turn with the comments of correction, such as, stop talking, wait your turn, I didn't see your hand raised, shh, it's not your time yet, let me let somebody else talk. Even when phrased very positively, what those comments are focused on is stopping the negative or the undesirable behavior in the student. It's basically just telling them one thing, which is stop, don't do it. It doesn't really tell them what to do in place of blurting out. And so in our students with special needs or unique needs, what you'll find is just telling them to stop isn't enough. It won't stop behavior because they don't know what else to do. And there are reasons why they blurt out, which we're going to talk about in a minute. So you're trying to take away their compensation for some of their skill weaknesses or deficits without telling them what to do appropriately or teaching them how to do that appropriately. So positive behavior supports, just to remind you, are always working towards teaching replacement skills. So if we don't want the student to be talking out loud or out of turn, what do we want them doing? What skill can we teach in place of that is what we're going to be focused on now. So let's start with with one question here. Why? Why do students talk out of turn? Now, there are many, many, many reasons. We won't go into all of them. I'm going to highlight two main reasons today, and I'm just going to say up front that that is not the only two reasons that students with special needs talk out of turn, but these are two of the more common reasons. And sometimes it helps teachers and parents just to hear that there are reasons why this happens, and so patience can then be extended, and then once again we have some room and space created to teach those positive replacement behaviors. So number one reason that students may talk out of turn is related to memory issues. So some of our students may have exceptional long-term memory. They may not forget any details from the past or long ago, but they may have an incredible difficulty remembering what you just said or what they are thinking long enough to wait for the appropriate time to talk. I see this a lot in kids who are visual learners and not auditory learners. So it's harder to retain that auditory input. So if you're teaching on something and they hear it, they may very well realize that they can't retain that question or that thought or that piece of information long enough for you or others to stop talking so that they can get their thought or their question out. And so a lot of times this is true in students who blurt out on topic. It shows you they really are tracking with what you are talking about, but they simply can't wait long enough for you to stop talking, because by the time you stop talking, they will have forgotten what they wanted to say, and that's very frustrating. We as adults know that when we can't remember names or details, and you just say, just give me a minute, I know I'll be able to remember. That's equally as challenging in young people, if not more so, because they really are trying to learn and they simply can't remember. So memory issues is number one. Number two is social skill issues. Many of our students with special needs don't pick up on social cues. And so some of those social cues are simply what you may think is very, very obvious, such as someone else in the room is talking. You turn and look to see who that is, and you're very well aware that that person over there is speaking. Some of our kids and students don't easily recognize who is talking or that someone is talking, and so they're often lost in their own thoughts. I will also add, a lot of our students have very loud or busy thoughts and minds, so they're constantly thinking on things, and sometimes those things are not on topic. But sometimes they are. And so, again, if you have a student who's talking off topic, it may very well be that their minds are very busy and they are thinking in their own world about, whatever it is that they're occupying themselves with to be patient and wait. But at some point, those thoughts just start coming out and they don't recognize or notice or are aware that someone else in the room is talking. So both of these issues can be very challenging, again, because just simply saying stop isn't going to be enough. So what do we do to support? I'm going to give you 3 ideas today. Again, these are not the only 3, but I found these 3 ideas to be very helpful in the big picture of addressing this problem in a positive way without a lot of training. Number 1, I'm going to start with a youth appropriate and even older elementary appropriate idea, since this question came in from someone in student ministry. And that is to have a clipboard or a notepad or a dry erase board, whichever one is more fun, more cool, more age appropriate to your youth group or your elementary kids, available to this student to write down their questions or their thoughts so that they won't forget them. As they're listening, something pops in. We're going to encourage them to write it down, and we're going to answer those questions for them either within the context of the class or at the end. So I'm going to pause here to say one thing that can help significantly for kids who blurt out is one-on-one time with the teacher. They're often very bright. They often have a hard time navigating peer-peer relationships, and so adult relationships are very positively affirming. They get the attention, they get to share what's on their mind, and it's a very safe place for them to have interaction. So what I like to say to teachers with students who blurt out is, if you can take 2 to 5 minutes at the start of class to intentionally engage your student in what has happened in their life, what they're thinking on, what's been going on over the last few days, and use up some of those thoughts and words and questions before class starts, that can really reduce their need to interrupt and get your attention during class. And then similarly with this idea with the clipboard, what you would want to do is make sure that they know that you're available at the end for anything that they didn't get answered during the course of the class. And once students know that they can get you from in the beginning and the end, that may really lessen their abilities or their desires to interrupt you while you're teaching, which would be our goal. So idea 1, clipboard, notebook, dry erase pad. If you already have a buddy in place and you don't have a writer, but you have someone who is talkative, that buddy could easily write down those notes and help your student know that it's captured, and we can continue listening without having fear of forgetting. Number 2 is a favorite in my house, and it's something so simple, but this is what I'm going to show you. You may have to find the student youth group edition that may not look quite as young and juvenile, but the concept still applies. So in our house, we have a plastic microphone, and whoever has the microphone in their hand is the one who is talking, and everybody else is listening. And you may think this is silly, how could this really help? But having a visual, and the visual not just being, for example, I'm just going to choose what's available to me here. A flashlight looks a lot like a microphone, but a flashlight isn't used for talking like a microphone is. And again, a lot of our kids are very, very bright. And so having a microphone, ours doesn't amplify, it's plastic, it doesn't work. But that visual, this is what I talk into, and when this person is talking in the microphone, I'm listening, really helps all of the others to realize it's not their turn. We had previously tried things, balls or flashlights, things that you can pass around, and those don't trigger the awareness that you're supposed to be talking with this. In fact, sometimes it was more distracting having a different object. Balls get tossed, flashlights get turned on and off. Microphones are for talking. And so I would encourage you, whatever age or stage, this is obviously developmentally appropriate for preschools, it's plastic, for elementary schools, older elementary kids. If this is too young looking for your junior high, senior high kids, you could easily use a karaoke mic, or just find something that isn't quite so kid-like. But microphones can be used for the benefit of the whole room in a Sunday school or youth group setting, and it not appear that you're signaling out someone else. So again, try this. Parents, this is a great idea. I'm going to speak to you at the very end of ideas you can do, but this is a great way for you to practice these communication skills at home. And then the third idea of a positive support is to add a buddy to your student. And that could be an adult buddy, or it could be a peer buddy. For our older kids, you may consider adding a peer buddy that changes each week. Just someone who can sit there and who can whisper a conversation when those thoughts get so loud in their minds, or they have to have something answered right then. That buddy may be just the support that's needed to get those questions answered. Adults are especially good at this role because they're not also trying to listen to the lesson. Hopefully everybody is, but with student or peer buddies, sometimes the concern is that they then won't hear the lesson if they're answering questions. So if that's your concern, I would consider an adult buddy who isn't going to have to be as focused on the lesson, and also may know more advanced answers if the questions being asked are more significant or super on topic and maybe even ahead of where the teacher is going. And those buddies know that they're in there just to answer this question. Sometimes a question whispered and an answer whispered back is all that's needed to then be able to keep going. So those are 3 ideas that you could implement positively without much effort. I will say for parents, this is also something I would encourage you to be working on at home with your students. Skills don't magically appear in classroom or group settings that are not present in a home or a one-on-one environment. And a lot of times we may think they'll eventually learn or get it when in fact it really is that they're not learning because we just haven't spent the duration of teaching the skill that's needed. Some of these kids learn these skills very, very slowly and just need lots and lots of practice. But most students can make progress. So no matter the age, think about ways that you could target this at the dinner table, family devotions, around in the car, wherever it is that your family does its talking. Think about some of these ideas. The first I would say is, to practice. Well, first to get a microphone and practice with the microphone. It sounds so simple, but I assure you that you'll be surprised at how easy it is and how it works. The second idea is to practice with some memory games. One of our favorites that involves memory and turn taking is where you make up a story as you go. Each person takes a turn, but you have to repeat what was said before you and add on to it. So we're targeting 3 skills here, and I'll give you an example of how it works. We're targeting listening to others, we're targeting memory, having to retain what was said until it's my turn to talk, and we're working on turn taking. So here's how it might go. I might start the story and say, I'm going to the store. And then the next person gets the microphone and they repeat what I say. They say, I'm going to the store. And then they add to it and say, to buy bananas. And then the microphone is passed to the next person. And the next person says, I'm going to the store to buy bananas. And they add, and milk. And so then it passes to the next person. I'm going to the store to buy bananas and milk, but first I stopped for ice cream. And so on it goes, trying to remember all that has come before you. And the best part about this game is that it's repeated each time by the person who's talking. And so you're layering in that memory work. It may be very challenging for these kids with unique needs to remember the new piece that's added, but everyone can kind of buffer and help along with whatever is forgotten, and then have a chance again when it gets back to your turn to repeat the whole sentence with more added. So again, practice. Try not to focus on the negative, but instead when you're at home trying to build these skills, really focus on encouraging your students and helping them see the progress themselves. Tell them when you're proud of them. Practice writing down questions. If any of these tips work in the classroom setting, consider them at home. If you have a kid that blurts out during movies, maybe you have them write down, or you write down for them those questions during the movie, and then make sure that you answer them at the end. And make sure for both parents and teachers that you're giving good quality, focused, not distracted one-on-one time to your kids who are having a hard time blurting out, because they need to be heard and they need to be loved and they need to know that what they have to say is important and not just hear, shh, stop talking, I can't do that right now, every single time they have a thought. So carve out some intentional space to make that relationship buoyed and help make it extra special for them. If these tips don't get to the heart of what you're thinking, again, we would love to hear from you. So email us your questions, email us your thoughts at connect@engagingdisability.org, and we will be sure to answer you back. If not, highlight your question here in the future.